declare the meeting open. Welcome everybody. We don't have any apologies. Everybody's here, so that's great. Is there any notification of any urgent additional business? Not. Just remind members of any declaration of interest if there's any items on the agenda. Just let us know. And have I got someone that will confirm the minutes from the 17th of December? Yeah. Andrew moves and Sue seconds. All in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We don't have anyone in the public forum, so we'll get underway. And welcome, Anne. We've got the drafting of plan 7.1. Morning. And Nadia, morning. Morning. Oh, the old light on here. Yep, excellent.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. This morning we're presenting the preliminary annual plan budget and the assessment of significance and materiality for your consideration, and we'll be seeking your decision on consultation and your approval of that preliminary budget. So over a series of workshops through November, December and January, you've had the opportunity to discuss and debate the various aspects of the draft annual plan, budget and projects. And over this period, based on those discussions, we've provided additional detail and sought to find additional savings and revenue based on your direction. You will have seen coming through last night 4 documents which you can find in your folder for today, namely where the rates figures are sitting now, an updated list of the capital projects, how these rates figures impact various property types, and the consultation assessment. So we'll be going through all of these things together during this item. So Lani is going to start by providing an update on the budget, which brings together all our discussions over the last 3 months, plus she'll be providing some new additional information. And then I'll take you through the assessment of significance and materiality, which is used to determine whether consultation is required. And then we'll conclude by seeking your approval of the preliminary budget and that decision on consultation.
Morning, everyone. So first today, I just wanted to talk through the budget, where we've landed and what we changed from last week, and then sort of compare it to the LTP throughout this presentation. I'll show you what the increase for each type of rate is and what the key drivers are for those increases. Just recap over that again. And then we would go through what the proposed rates increase means for some of our indicator properties that we look at, and then as Anne said, she'll go over the consultation side of things. So as at today, so remember last week we were sitting at 6.03%, and as at today we've got to 5.92%. So what changed since last week's workshop? You've asked us to look at, or we agreed on some changes to the fees and charges, so we've made those and got 171k additional income from that. We've been able to, within that, find additional funding for another resource in the animal control area. And you talked through some delays to some of the capital projects. So that brings some interest savings of 190,000. Other things that changed, staff have, we're working on reforecast to 30th of June 2026. Our capital program, it looks like we're not going to hit what we had exactly in our budget. So we've worked through how much, so our opening debt will be lower than we had expected. So there'll be some interest savings from that point of view. And then the other thing, which is a sort of a negative impact on our budget, but before Christmas, we were using a forecast interest rate of 4.21%. Now, financial advisors have said that the rate shifted a little bit. So we've also built that into the plan, and that's something we'll continue to monitor as well. So that's what we've changed to arrive at 5.92%. Now, just comparing what does that look like compared to what we had in the LTP. In the LTP, in terms of total rate revenue, we'd forecast we would hit 5.1%, so we're slightly above that. And in terms of our water rates and our other water rates, which is the limits that we are monitoring and trying to maintain, we are within the LTP limits, but we're slightly ahead of where we forecast. But in terms of those percentage increase limits, they're kind of a funny thing to monitor against because it depends on where you started from the year before when you're looking at increases. So I've included the next slide, which talks about the actual rates revenue that we expected in dollar terms. So total rates revenue of $65.9 million compared to we'd forecast $65.4 million. So we're talking about 500,000 more than we'd forecast 3 years ago for this year of the LTP. In terms of the water rates requirement, we're 400,000 below where we'd forecast 3 years ago for our LTP limit. And in terms of all the other activity rates, we're 900,000 more than we'd forecast 3 years ago. As part of Anne's significant assessment that she's got, we've got quite a good table that shows the key differences between our LTP forecast and this draft annual plan. I'll go through some of the key variances, but they're more focused on our difference to last year, why we've increased from last year's rates. So we'll carry on. If there's any questions on that so far.
Any questions from the group? No?
Okay. Okay, so in terms, so council sets targeted rates are only paid by the people that use those services. So our council has a fairly simple rating system. So our targeted rates are charged for community halls, curbside collections, stormwater, and then our wastewater and water rates. And then general rates are paid by all ratepayers for the services that we can't sort of quantify easily, who gets the benefit from them. So everyone pays a share. So in terms of our targeted rates, you can see here in the halls, curbside, stormwater, there's not a lot of change from last year in those rates. Not a significant increase from last year. In terms of wastewater, that's the area that there's a 21.4% increase from the current year. And I'll go through and explain what those increases are built up from. Water, a 3.82% increase, and general rates, 3.27% increase. So those areas I'll explain a little bit more as to what's driving those increases. So for wastewater, so we're looking at 1.94 million increase on the rates requirement. Key things is the interest cost for the Matamata wastewater grade project. So we sort of shifted the timing of that. So there's more interest coming on in this coming year. Depreciation, we fully fund the depreciation for wastewater. Costs have increased to replace our assets. So that's what the 237,000 is. We have bumped up our funding for desludging from rates because we know that's a big cost coming at our ratepayers. So we need to start funding that. We're currently funding it at 600,000. We'll bump that up to $1 million. And then there's a number of other sort of rats and mice costs that total 429,000. Offsetting that, we think we can get 500k additional income from trade waste fees from industrial users of our service. And we've had a reallocation of the overheads as well to make some savings in that area. So in total, 1.94 million additional rates required in that area. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah, Lania,
Yeah.
do we need to fully fund the depreciation on wastewater considering we'll be handing it over July this year to the new entity?
That's their expectation. Yeah.
Can we save ourselves 237K in the short run though, and then they can start doing their own depreciation because it's a non-cash item on the books anyway, isn't it?
If I can comment, the trajectory for wastewater costs is closely aligned to the capital investment that's occurring, and there's considerable capital investment across the waters over the next 10 years. Depreciation funding effectively either pays for capital or it pays loans. It is the biggest area of our balance sheet for debt, those water and wastewater in particular. So any saving or reduction we make in depreciation is actually just going to push it down to another year, because we have, the community have to pay those loans off. So my advice to you is, yes, we could make a decision now. All I think it's going to do is mean a bigger blip later on. That's I think I tried to explain, perhaps not as concisely last week, but that's my view of what we're facing in the water space.
But I completely understand. Yeah, I just I thought if we had the opportunity to defer that to Waikato Water's done well for the space of a year or so, well, let's bank the money. But yeah, but if it's paying the loan, and I also understand it's part of the capital restructuring reinvestment fund as well. But I just worry that ratepayers getting hit twice because we're doing depreciation, and then when we build a new plant, we have to borrow anyway. So whether we're able to a new plant like Matamata, we could defer depreciation for the first 10 years of its life, but it should have a 50-60 year lifespan.
What I'd like to reassure is there's no double dipping here. You don't charge loan repayment as well as depreciation. It's the depreciation funds for loan repayment, principal repayment.
Yeah. Just for clarity on that, though, along with what Andrew's saying, though, but surely if we're handing it over on the 1st of July, which is in theory when we're talking about setting the rates for the 1st of July onwards next year, then the debt also transfers over to the water entity. So although we depreciate, the debt's getting handed over and the assets are handed over to the water entity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the reason why is we've got $200 million worth of capital to invest over the next 10 years in accordance with our water services delivery plan approved by the Department of Internal Affairs, $200 million worth of capital over the next 10 years. So now we will get some of that done ourselves over this next week, continuing with the program, and then Waikato Waters will pick it up. So my point is, they'll do the work and they'll raise more debt. The same people are going to be paying that debt off. So we give them a holiday now. It will come home in the next couple of years, is all I'm saying. And my advice to you is, I think what we try to achieve in local government, we don't always successfully achieve this. We try and have a smooth trajectory, not a steep trajectory. And in my view, this is one of those decisions where you're trying to smooth it out. The capital will be done. It may not be done in 10 years, to be fair. It may take a little bit longer, but it's going to happen. So all I'm saying to you is I would counsel against a short-term decision in this space, because there's an inevitability that work has to be done. There's an absolute inevitability.
Yes, I'm sorry, I still struggle with it though, because surely from the 1st of July, when the water entity starts charging our ratepayers, they would be charging for the depreciation.
100%. And so I know one of your comments that you've made is, and I know you've made this very clear to the board, you don't want to see Waikato Water suddenly ratcheting up the rate increases steeply. Even though you are responsible for that, you're taking a view that it's our community and you want to see a a reasonable, defendable change. If we were to take out this depreciation funding now, we're setting Waikato Waters up to make a steeper increase later. Absolutely, they take over the debt and they take over the revenue. So it's kind of like, it's like the foundation of a house, if you like. This revenue stream is one of the foundations. And you lower the foundation, you're still going to get there eventually. So yes, you could. I'm just saying you could. My advice is, for the amount involved, and given we're in sync roughly with what we said in the LTP in terms of the increase in these areas, which I think we've taken some risk on that already. What we've done is we've said we're going to push harder on trade waste fees. So we're taking some risk on there. We may not get there. If we don't get there, that means that's shifting to Waikato Waters to pick up the slack. So I look at it as, yes, this is 1 year, but there's a 10-year plus view here. And so I'm not and you can make that call. I personally think my advice to you is that's not a good strategic move.
I understand. Just for clarity though, Manaia, is once the asset's handed over to Waikato does Waters done well, is we won't need to charge depreciation on that asset because that should be under control of Waikato does water.
Yeah, so what they'll do is, you're absolutely right. They won't fund depreciation. What they'll do is they'll say, what is the capital program that we've got? What are the borrowing covenants that we have, and how do we stay within that? And one of the ways of doing that is obviously borrowing prudently.
But is the expectation from Waikato Waters does well is that we continue to charge depreciation?
No, not yet. No, they will.
They will.
No, but they won't call it depreciation. As you point out, depreciation is a non-cash cost. The reality is making sure your balance sheet and your debt levels are appropriate. We use depreciation to do that. They will do it their way. But I guess what I'm saying is we've got X dollars that we're funding at the moment. We've set a base for our community going into Waikato Waters. We reduce that base, we're getting them to pick that up. It's the same people who will pay. It's the same people who will pay. It's a bit like, and can I use the phrase, it's your phrase if I can, Mr. Mayor. I believe we would be kicking the can if we tried to take this off now.
No, I understand that, and I agree with you on that. I was just thinking this is for next year. If we're handing the assets over, then why are we paying depreciation in the first place when it should be the assets under the control of Waikato Waters?
So we're responsible. We're basically funding the whole year, even though we passed the assets over in October. We're setting the base for the whole year.
Okay. So when does that stop then? When we stop charging our rate?
1 July 27.
Okay.
Because you can't legally only rate for 3 months of the year. You have to rate for the whole year.
Okay.
4 months, sorry.
Okay. That's clear.
That's on there. I should not call it depreciation on there. I should call it asset replacement funding.
That's fine.
That's why I never became an accountant. but it's good to know because we need
100%.
clarity around it. Yes, Garrett.
Just on another question. While we're making some prudent decisions about what it looks like for us in the next financial year, how does this impact in Waikato Waters done well, just considering asset for 7 councils? And what's the impact of that decision on how they will structure the impact?
Actually, that's a nice question to bring the whole context together. Thank you. Because I mentioned we have a water services delivery plan and we have a legal obligation to implement that. And then Waikato Waters pick that obligation up for every council. And so they've seen our water service delivery plan and they've seen the capital that we've projected in there. So that becomes almost its guide in the early stages anyway, until they can do things differently and hopefully better, in terms of capital investment than perhaps we could do on our own. So it's a good point that you make that we've got that document, which is the water service delivery plan. They're picking it up. That's their guide too. And I guess in terms of our relationship, it's kind of to an extent, we keep faith with what we have to do and what we can do. And then the mayor and will take your expectations and represent that in a shareholders document, shareholders expectation document, which will then set certain limits on or expectations on the company, on how they deliver it. And for example, I would imagine, and I don't know that this will end up being fine in the document, but I imagine the mayor will be saying, all of the mayors will be saying, we don't want to see a steep curve, massive increase in these charges. I would imagine. So,
otherwise, we may as well stay alone.
So the point is, we are very connected through those documents.
Too late, this.
Never mind.
This new council gets dumped right in it.
Okay,
We'll have a few ones.
thanks.
Okay, so we talked through what's driving the wastewater increases and rates requirement at 21.5% increase on the current year. What I want to highlight to you though is the impact on our ratepayers is actually more significant than 21.5%. And I'll try and explain this. So for wastewater, we previously had, for the last 15 years, had set 2 targeted rates for wastewater. One of them is the wastewater rates you can see on your bill. The other one, we had an agreement with Fonterra and Greenleys in Morrinsville for the Morrinsville wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So the upgrade was supersized, I guess, to accommodate Fonterra and Greenleys. And the part of the agreement for the last 15 years is that we charge them a targeted rate for their share of that cost. So in last year, for example, the rate was $677,000 that they paid. The agreement ends in this current financial year. So next year, that $677,000 that we'd usually, get from those industries now needs to come from ratepayers. So the impact for ratepayers will be around 31% increase on that rate. So that's, and when we get to the indicator properties, you'll see that quite clearly coming through as well. It's quite a significant.
No.
So, okay, I'll try again. So we need $10.9 million in rates total for wastewater. Previously, we would have got $670,000 from 2 industries. This year, we have to get that whole 10 million.
It's the historic agreement.
So the agreement has finished.
Yes, finished. Yeah.
No, I'm still, the agreement was for 10 years that they would pay 677,000 between
15 years. Yeah.
the 50.
Yeah.
And now they get it for nothing.
No, not that they get it for nothing. They still pay trade waste charges and they pay rates as well. But it was their share of
The initial.
the initial capital investment. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was pretty innovative at the time, was my understanding.
Yeah, I think if I can just, and I know it's something to absorb, not easy at times, but I think, as Lania said, when you look at the indicator properties, and then you also, it comes down to, for our community, we don't try and I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, what they're looking is the bottom line. And you've often said this, Councillor Whiting, looking at the bottom line. Well, if we look at the bottom line and what the effectiveness is, I'm not trying to pass over this issue, but it's a contributing factor that I think if we look at the bottom line, how does that stack up? Because that's what our ratepayers are going to see. Yeah, so.
So this was effectively a repayment over those 3 years.
for the bill.
Right. But on top of that, they've been paying up until now, they've still been paying a
Trade waste.
trade waste.
Correct.
Now we've been talking about that trade waste fee increasing.
Yes, it has.
Right. Okay. And we haven't had a kickback on that.
I've always seen it.
The new charges were introduced on there's no offsets. The new charges were introduced on 1 July this year, and they are being paid. Two major parties, I won't mention it, but you know who they are, and we're working through the other parties as well. You'll see there's $500,000 additional trade waste fees that we've provided for.
So from a ratepayer perspective, the understanding is that the repayment effectively of that initial capital investment has finished.
Correct.
Hey,
Okay, so that was wastewater, and the other significant movement we saw was in water. So water has gone up 3.82% compared to the current year. So the big drivers there again was depreciation, the cost to renew our assets, I should say, interest costs, and we've again looked at our overheads there and had a bit of a shuffle. So those are the main things driving that 451k increase in cost, in rates required. Now again, for water, our targeted rate for water is split in over two different rates. So we have our metered water rate that most people see on their bill, and then the water supply targeted rate that most people see on their bill, and then for our high users, we have a metered water rate. So what we've tried to do, if you recall, the metered water rate is currently set at $3.01 for this current year, including GST. And we've tried to mirror the increase in the metered water rate to mirror our, the 3.82% that for the whole water activity. So that would push it up to $3.12 per cubic metre, including GST.
That would be logical, wouldn't it? Because it doesn't cost any more to produce the water for a water supply, or whether it's metered. So it should be the same.
That's what we've tended to do, and historically is to keep the two in sync. I know the comment has been made that the metered water rate is very low relative to what it might cost them elsewhere. From a principal perspective, we've said the targeted rate and the water meter rate should be a relativity. So, and I'm not trying to cut off that other discussion. I think the only other thing I'd say about those two rates, one is you can have 100% certainty on, which is the first line. The second one is based on the climate, whether we get a lot of rainfall. You may have seen in the financial report this year for November that we're a little bit higher in the water meter, and it happens from time to time. Sometimes we have a really dry season, which is hard, but actually we end up with a lot more revenue. So my key point about, sorry, very long-winded, but key point is, yes, we try to maintain the relativities. You might want to question that. Secondly, we don't have the same control over metered water because it's about consumption. Consumption can vary. Generally, it's consistent, but it can vary. We may not hit the mark in any one year. We may exceed it in another year.
just quickly, once again, it's a depreciation on that increase will be finished by 2027.
Oh, you're absolutely right. We no longer charge. You're right. Absolutely right. Yes.
Lanny.
General rates. So we're looking at a 1.23 million increase on the general rates. So the key things there are employee costs across the board, 1.3 million. If you recall, we've reduced our pools and spa income. The budgets we'd set previously were very optimistic, so we sort of brought that down to reality a little bit, especially with the current climate. It'll be our first year operating open country stadium, so we've allowed some additional operating expense there. Tamana Forum and councillor fees, we're looking at an increase there of 60,000, remembering that the councillor fees are legislated, so you don't have any option on that one. Legal enforcement costs, so I think it's an animal control, they're looking for some additional, we've seen the legal fees are ramping up in that area, so we need to provide for that. we can't really offset that cost or recover those costs either. Microsoft 365 licenses, we're now operating that in that environment, so it's no longer a capital cost, it's an operating cost.
Is that an increase? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to sort of say the same thing. Is that a one-off cost or are we paying that?
The Microsoft licenses?
That's a
Yeah, yearly, we have to pay that.
Yeah, I won't call it.
No,
It's gonna-
no.
Can I ask, are those set nationally, like for public for government, or is that a negotiation with Microsoft?
We have it's a negotiated rate. It's not, we are part of a government agreement which gets a certain discount. And then we have a discussion with the agent who sells on behalf of Microsoft about the actual rate we pay. So there's a bit of a guaranteed discount plus a bit of a negotiation.
In our current year's budget, we have some better off from government funding that is funding our position. And we won't have that next year, so we need to accommodate for that. And there's other rats and mice there, adding up to the 1.23 million. Offsetting that, after our discussions on fees and charges, we've increased those by 542,000. And we also have our rates penalty income is sitting at around 400,000 now, so we can increase. That's not a lovely thing to do, but that's the reality. Yeah. And we've also looked at, we talked last week about our overheads we were allocating, and we've allocated some more to our housing department, which is sort of a ring fence, doesn't require rates funding. So that's where we've got to 1.23 million increase on the general rate.
Well, only
And then,
a question on the wage increase. What was the percentage of that again?
Sorry, might call on Kelly.
It was 3%, right?
Yes, that's what we allowed.
So as a socially conscious person, Comm Mobility Services, all the staff are getting a 3% increase in their wages. How are you working that out? Or someone at the top getting 3%? Or
Thank you. No, that's
does it work?
it's a really good question. It's an average in terms of calculating the budget, but actually the process, the payments in the organisation, one chunk of the organisation, we do what we call a market assessment. We get information that says, for this particular type of position, this is what the market pays. So we look at that. Now they might get more than 3% or less. KVS, many of KVS, or a number of KVS are covered by unions, and their union negotiations for some of those, and then their individual contracts for others. So there'll be people paid on either side of that. Okay, so some will be paid more than 3, some will be paid less. That's an average.
Will some get none?
It's happened before.
Yeah.
It's
So
not
we're talking
often.
about external staffing, like consultants?
No,
Nothing?
no. This is
Internal?
Yeah.
So who determines who gets what?
our process. We have a process for each of the areas.
Determined by who?
We have determined that as an executive, we've mapped out, because it's a very good point that we try to be very transparent about how we set our remuneration. So the union process, you'll be familiar with, it takes its own course. There's a negotiation with them. But for most other people, we say we want to pay no less than what the market's paying. We want to pay our people fairly. So we have a process whereby we collect data from the market, from local government, other councils, to see what people are paying for as close as possible the same positions. And that's what drives our decisions. So we share that information with each individual. I would have to say, if I go back 20 plus years, we didn't do it that way. It used to be get the percentage and we do it uniform. Now we
With
do
due
it.
respect, but I don't think there wouldn't be one council in New Zealand that's making money at the moment. They're all probably losing money, so they're all under huge monetary stress to try and balance the books. So using the model of, we're on a par with them, that's not a good model, because a par with them could be down the toilet.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. And we're in really bad economic times. And I'm not saying don't give pay rise, but I think comparing apples with apples, I just think that maybe the people on the ground zero doing all the work got the Commonwealth team and those lovely gardeners that maybe they should be at the top of the list. I really do think that, and to sustain them, like with me and Ash talked about, Mayor Ash, about people leaving good workers that have knowledge of our pipes and our drains and they leave to go to another council, so they might get $2 an hour more. And that's not right. So as long as that's not happening, I'm here to vote it in to look after our people and
It's a really good comment.
people at the top are already making a heap of money. They don't need more, mate.
Yeah,
The
look.
ones down the bottom that are really struggling, they need the money.
So
That's what I'd like.
100%. And look, I think to your point, the process around salary setting is one thing, but if you're also seeing high levels of dissatisfaction from your staff because we're not paying adequately, or we're seeing lots of staff leave us because they can get paid elsewhere better, and that happens, but if that was at a level that was unacceptable, we've got something wrong. Now, we want to pay our staff fairly across the board. Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter whether you're an executive or you're on the front line. We want to pay everybody fairly, and we want a transparent process. I believe we've got that. I don't know if we get that right all the time. What I will say to you, though, as an indicator, last calendar year, our turnover rate across the organisation was 12.5%. Okay. Our turnover rate in KDS, I think, was below that and below that number. Now, things can change. I mean, it's just an indicator. But my point is, you're absolutely right. We've got a process, but you need to be looking at a bigger picture, and we try to. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not a CE for a long time, but I've been involved in this for a long time.
Things are changing.
So I absolutely, but I've seen this before too. These times that you're talking about, in 1990, I had 18% interest rates. 18%. And that was on mortgages as well as council. So
back then, the house was worth 40 grand.
I get that, but what I'm saying is I've used to dealing with financial pressure, and I know that you've got to take a long-term view and you've got to have a process which will never be perfect, but it's not like that. That's what I'd say. But good points.
Well, yeah, you're in charge. Yep.
So
And then Bruce.
just with the increased employee fee costs, is that just pay rises or is that additional headcount?
Yeah, great question. And it's actually a question that's been come up from the council earlier. And so and Kelly has just, we released that last night? The FTEs. Like we've put, I think it was Ash, you asked for the figures specifically of the change in our staff. And I think we've gone back to 2021. Yeah, the change in our staff since 2021.
Yeah.
We've put a table in there that shows all our, what we call our full-time equivalents or our headcount of employees since 2021 to date, what's changed, and particularly on new staff, okay? And look, the biggest change in terms of new staff occurred after we adopted the LTP and the 24-25 LTP, when we went through an organisation restructure. And that did bring on more staff. It definitely did. Some of those staff came on because we picked up the refuse transfer stations directly, rather than contracting out, but we have brought on more staff. So we've got what I'm saying to you is that we've mapped all of that out, hopefully at a level that is very transparent to you. We're not trying to hide anything. This is what's changed.
Yeah, I must have missed that. I'll be keen to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
With that restructure, did we do a review of the whole organisation? Is that what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're pretty confident we're putting the right staffing, or
No, we're actually doing another review right now.
Right.
Why? Because when we did that last review, we knew something would happen with Wooders, but we didn't know exactly. We didn't know that the RMA was going to be changed potentially to the extent it was. We didn't know that the government was going to potentially change what local government looks like. What we're doing now is trying to address those issues with another review.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's good.
Bruce.
So we've got reduced better off funding of 101k. When we talked about better off funding, it was it 800,000 or something we got, and there was a big debate on how much of that was we wanted to see it in capital, all right, and we agreed for, was it 15 or 20%?
Yes.
As an operational cost to implement that work. So that involved employing people to implement the Better Off funding projects. Now, if that Better Off funding is finished and gone, did the people finish, or were they morphed into a different role? That means that we've still got to find 101K.
What we're saying is, what we are doing is that those roles that we have, we are reviewing, okay, and that will be part, and one of the questions is.
Part of this review?
Yes, absolutely.
Those review, is it like by in-house staff?
Yes. Oh, sorry. The executive team are driving the review. We have engaged somebody to help us with it, but we're driving it. It's us. We're doing it with our team.
Yeah.
Back to you, Laney. Thank you.
Time, but last night you were sent the indicator properties, which is the sort of where the rubber hits the road. So what's our rate bill going to look like for our and we look at a range of properties. The range is the properties that we pick are decided on because like if you're looking at residential properties, they generally get all the services, so all the targeted rates apply to them. Through to commercial, where commercial property get charged on a per pan basis for the number of toilets they have, so that can have a really significant impact for like the likes of hotels and bars and that sort of thing with more than one toilet. And then obviously your lifestyle and rural properties don't get the targeted rates. They're not connected to council services. So that's why we pick those properties, and we look at a range of different capital values, because as you shift the capital value, that has a big impact on the general rate that they pay. So hopefully you've got the table in front of you that was sent last night. It's probably not easy to look up on the screen there, but probably a better way of looking at it is in the graphs that I sent through. So this graph here talks about how much the rates bill will go up, and to read this graph, if you look at the top line, for example, we're saying a lifestyle property with a capital value of 700,000 would see a $61 increase in their rates bill for next year. Yeah, I guess the lifestyle and the rural properties, their only rates they're getting is the general rate and the UAGC. So they're not seeing those big increases come through from those water and wastewater rates. At the bottom end of the scale is the commercial and industrial properties, because they are charged more than one wastewater rate. In this example, we've used one with 3 toilets. So they're seeing a really significant increase in their rates of a $3 million commercial property receives a rates increase of $818.
There's not a lot of difference, is there, between the values, really? Like, you're talking in a residential property, 750K, and then one that's nearly twice the value is basically going up $4. So and just probably more for the new councillors. So you understand that the pressures that we've got is in the water and wastewater. That's where the rising cost is. So you see the rural going up basically next to nothing, but you can see where the rates are lying with the water and wastewater fees, and for commercial as well. So that's just to clarify.
I sort of believe that's the way things have to go. You've got to move away from the capital-based rating scheme and use what a user pays versus what's happening here. But how this is going to be accepted, I don't know either.
So yeah.
Well, what it doesn't show is that those lifestyle and rural properties have to provide their water and wastewater right systems anyway, personally. Right? And I know that I recently changed the water and you know, a new tank and all the pumping and what have you was $5,000, right? And we know what Waitara are looking at if they were to do those sort of things. So you can't look at that in isolation and look, oh, you can't, you know, in town we're paying so much more when these figures don't represent the true overall value for those people in rural areas. No, I don't disagree with you. Yeah.
The hard part is, just saying, I think you can take your rates or your taxes and farmer, but, there's a little old lady. That's the only thing that does hurt is that, you know, there's I keep like little old lady speech at the rate time is, you know, your rates are going up quite a bit. They're usually single income units. However, actually, you get nothing more from a 750 than you do from a $1 million property. So you're still being charged. So I don't worry about that so much. But that's the kicker really with single income, aging and retired people, which we've got a lot of. But life is tough.
No, but the way I think of it, Sue, is you know, the little old lady might be living in a $2 million house, but her income is solely the retirement pension or something that, you know, so it's that's why I'm keen to move away from a capital rating value to more of a user pay, because then they can pick and choose what they want to use, I suppose, in order to match their income in theory. Yeah.
Theoretically, water meters will do that, but
Thanks.
Okay, so the next slide, when we talk, you know, our headline is that our, you know, rates increase is 5.92%, but the rate increase that properties see will be quite different to that. So that next graph is showing sort of the percentage that these properties will see. I mean, it shows that, I think the key thing to point out here is that the lower value properties actually see a bigger percentage increase compared to the higher value properties in the same category. And that's just because of the increased UAGC, or the annual general charge, makes up and the targeted rates make up a bigger percentage of their total rates bill. So that's how that sort of anomaly comes in.
But that's 5.92 the average.
5.92 is our total council's revenue compared to last year's total council revenue. So it's the increase in total rates revenue. Yeah. So that's, yeah.
The one right in the bottom line here, that commercial and industrial, 14%. What does that represent? Like what? Give me an example. What properties would that come in?
So we've got $1 million cash property side.
So anything over $1 million.
So
So they're going to have a 14% increase.
yeah, if they have two, or that in that example, 3 toilets, and they're
Well, they are pan tax and
yeah.
we got, but they put you know I scrapped that and they put water meters on our 2 properties, which I paid for, then hand them back to council, and I've never had a water bill because we don't even come up to a 3-bedroom house. So my argument, that's we don't. I mean, I've never had a water bill since I've been in. And someone got to go around and read the water bill, and
you might get one.
And this is where the
No, it's
water
just
meters is going to be, you know, for
my water meters. Yeah.
Sorry, if there's no more questions on that, the last thing I wanted to just draw your attention to. So we were interested to see what our proposed rates bill looks like compared to what we'd forecast in the LTP 3 years ago for 2027. And we were pleasantly surprised to see that it's looking very like pretty much where we planned to be.
Great manipulation.
Yeah, so on that basis, yeah, in terms of significance assessment and that sort of thing, we are looking in line with what we set out in the LTP.
So this is coming back in the next conversation, the ban about significant change for public consultation, which clearly showed you can't get much better than that. Support.
Unless we went lower.
Okay, thank you. Right, and this is it. Over to Anne.
I just want to talk about where that fits into the rates capping conversation.
Well,
Have you got any feel for whether how that will be done?
Oh,
Who knows? I
Yes, all I would say is if you look at our rate increases we've put forward, as the mayor said before, water and wastewater were higher than the theoretical rates cap. Everything else was below it. Whether that is able to be sustained going forward, it's part of our long-term plan discussion.
but interestingly enough too, it's more a headline, the 4% rate cap, because it doesn't include water and wastewater.
Sure, but
And that's the thing that's pushing rates up.
Yeah.
So it's smokes and mirrors. Yeah.
And I'll take you through the significance and materiality assessment that staff have prepared. It's one of the documents in your folder, so you might like to read along because that has more detail than the slides on the screen. So just to very briefly remind you that the annual plan's purpose is to put forward the budget for the 26-27 year and to identify any variations from the long-term plan for that year. And in the legislation, consultation is only required for the annual plan if there are significant or material variations to the long-term plan. So there's sort of a sliding scale. If the changes are only minor, deemed to be minor, then no consultation is required, and instead an information campaign can be undertaken. If the changes are deemed to be significant or material, and that's what this assessment goes through, then consultation is required, and we would prepare a consultation document to take out to the community to ask for their comment. And if there's very significant and specific changes, then that's a whole different ballpark of needing a long-term plan amendment. So in terms of roles, it's staff's role to undertake the assessment, but then ultimately as elected members, it's your role to consider this assessment and to use your judgment in making the final decision on whether consultation is required. So up on the screen and in your document are the 12 criteria which are used to assess significance. These are based on NPDC significance and engagement policy. So we take each of those criteria and we've chosen to look at the significance both in terms of the variation in the rates and the variation in the capital program. And we've gone through and rated each of those. And in the document, you'll see rationale for how and the thinking behind how each of those ratings has been come to. I'll try to quickly summarize the thinking for each of those. And please just ask any clarification you would like. So in terms of the degree of change from the LTP, in terms of rates, we've compared, as Vania has outlined, the overall rate increase is within 1% of the forecast in the LTP. The draft water targeted rate is within the LTP limit and 1% higher. The draft other activities rate increase is just over 1% higher than forecast in the LTP and below the LTP limit. And you saw that graph at the end showing the close alignment. In terms of the capital program, it's the water activities, the only major changes at the wastewater treatment plant upgrade was moved into the 26-27 year, and you've had discussions on various deferrals or continuation of other projects. So on balance, both of those were rated as low significance, low variations of the LTP. I'm not sure if I should go through each of these in this. Would you like this me to go through the detail of each of these?
I think everyone's got a fair
Okay.
handle on that. That's fairly clear to you. Everyone's nodding yes. No, that's okay.
Okay, I'll just move on to the materiality.
Yep.
So there are also 4 criteria in terms of assessing the materiality. So does the difference involve a change to the financial strategy or funding impact statement? There's some comment there, and this has been rated as having a low rating. Might the difference alter a reasonable person's conclusions about affordability? And there's some commentary there which we have concluded it's that since it is largely in line with the LTP, that would not alter a reasonable person's conclusions. And also in terms of then the 3rd criteria is around levels of service. There are no proposed changes to levels of service. And the 4th criteria is around whether a reasonable person may choose to make a submission based on the variations. And while we've said that there may be some public interest in some of the projects that have been deferred, for example, there will very likely be the opportunity to give further comment during the next long-term plan process. So overall, on balance, those were also rated as having a low rating. And in conclusion, based on that assessment, is staff's recommendation that the assessment of significance and materiality indicates that there are no significant or material variances to the long-term plan, and that therefore consultation is not required. Is there any any questions?
Yeah, maybe no questions. I'll just make a comment. So, for me, it looks like there's possibly no need to go out and put a consultation as such, because it's basically in line with the long-term plan figures. It doesn't look as significant. And saying that, the intention is to also give plenty of media around this and to keep public and break it down for the public, which I'm more than happy to front that and give them facts and figures so that people are aware of where the increase is coming from. So there'll be plenty of overkill, plenty of media, because as we know, we're starting up that fortnightly in the papers too, and I see this as a segue for some of this information coming up to the rate rises, because people are going to be earning out here, don't get me wrong, and it's not easy for people to find another $300 a year on their rates. So we need to put that and explain exactly where the pressure is.
The comms are drafting a whole comms campaign right for over the year leading into the long-term plan. A number of conversations and the annual plan will be part of that plan.
And we've also got to get that transition over to the water entity. We've got to get that. I still believe probably 80% of it, or even 90% of our communities don't know anything about it. So we're doing that. Andrew and then Grace.
Oh, sorry, Mary Ash. With that in mind, I was happy to move option A as a recommendation.
Yep, that's great. And I'll just go to Grace for a comment.
Oh, I'm happy to second that
Oh,
right there, but I'll say it after while
Yep.
we're on the topic.
Okay, we're good. And so you're moving 1, 2, and 3A.
Yes. Sorry. Yep.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table. Andrew has moved the information we received. Council approves the preliminary draft annual plan 26-27 budget as presented. And option A, council confirms that there are no significant or material differences from year 3 of long-term plan 24-34, and that no formal consultation on the annual plan 26-27 is required, and information can continue to be developed to keep the community informed. And we have Grace second. All in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. And Grace, did you want to?
I just want to publicly say thank you. Seeing the information last night, especially in terms of just seeing the Excel spreadsheet report, it was so much clearer for me. I don't know what everyone else thought, and down to the detail of even explaining this graph shows X, Y, Z instead of, just a graph plot there. So I appreciate, that helps us as councillors explain it to people as well. I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. And, yeah,
Well, but go on, just to acknowledge what Chris said. But I think one of the things that we might ask, if you could just produce a carved key bullet points for those of us who try and explain this to our spaces that we're in, just to help us.
that's a good idea. Yeah, very good.
But particularly that graph, that was quite. That's quite.
And what's driving the rate increases?
Yes.
Is that-
It's something that's
Basic, yes. Yeah.
One page summary.
well less than one page.
Five.
Really
Very good.
small writing.
Yeah, and on that note, guys, we're going to break for morning tea.
Can I just have to acknowledge the massive effort by the team. Thank you very much, councillors. A massive effort by the team sitting at the back. Many teams have done this, but also to yourselves for giving us the time to work through what's been a challenging situation. So very much appreciated. Yeah, no, I'm
We are still waiting.
Chairman, I talk.
Get click the light on there. Turn it there. Mark, click the light off in there. That usually get it. No, in the smoker room.
Setting you up.
Just here, mate. Yep.
That's,
That's it.
Everyone. So the purpose of today, this item is obviously to seek council's adoption of the draft documents for consultation. But prior to that, I just wanted to provide a brief update on how we got here in the review process. Clarify some points around menacing dog, which was talked about last week, and outline some of the changes to the draft documents that we've made following the feedback from the workshop last week. And also, we just wanted a quick check-in about the Hodaki Brown rule, because just finalising things and looking to consultation. There's a couple of things we just check in with you on that, and finally a couple of procedural issues. So I try and skip through it relatively quickly. Briefly, I just walk you through how we've got to this point in the review. So as you know, we're completing this review because it's a legislative requirement under the LGA. We must review our bylaws every 10 years, and associated to that, the Dog Control Act says that we must review the policy whenever we review the bylaws. That's why we're reviewing. So we began by analysing a wide range of data, that our CRMs, animal control trends, our dog control report that we must produce every year, and prior feedback from the community. This is a very high interest topic, so we do receive feedback, even though we're not reviewing this topic, but we have a wealth of information there available. And we also undertook some extensive engagement through our Pour in Order campaign. And we gathered some insights through a survey and through in-person events. So we've had some really strong engagement. And alongside that, we've held a series of workshops with elected members. So we've tried to bring all that together and and so we can understand any changes that we might need to make. We've also involved Te Mana Whenua Forum throughout this review, and they've had input throughout at different points as well. And so where we are now, obviously we're at the point where this is to seek your approval to take the draft policy and bylaw out for public feedback. So this is where our community can give us feedback on proposed changes. And just to be clear, this is not the final decision. There will be further opportunities to make any changes according to the feedback that we receive. So before we get to that point, we just have some minor points, as I said before, for clarification. So last week we were talking about menacing dogs, and there was some discussion about that. So I just wanted to bring this up again because there was potentially a little bit of confusion. So there's two ways that you can classify menacing dogs, and in the Act there are some automatic qualifications that council must do, and that's based on breed. And I didn't have the list with me last week, so I thought I'd just bring that here today. That's the list of breeds that must be classified as menacing. And then there's a discretionary part of the Act where council can classify any dog as menacing based on behaviour. So there's those two separate classifications there. And of course, the Act does place obligations on dog owners if their dog is classified as menacing. There's extra protections there. And that's also why we brought this to you, because we must state in our policy if we require menacing dogs to be neutered.
But I've learned something today with these names for the menacing dogs. The bottom one I know, but all the others, Chiro depressa canario sounds like a bird.
Yeah, so they're actually listed in a schedule of the Act.
Big Greeks get one of those.
So, what you said down the bottom, let's just go back. So that obligations for owners, is that from the Act?
Yes.
So the
Yes,
Act,
that's in the Act.
explicit that if it's a menacing dog, it must be neutered.
It must be muzzled in public places, but neutered according to the council's policy. So the council must state in its policy on dogs if it requires menacing dogs to be neutered, and you'll see the changes that we've
That's right.
proposed. Okay, so last week we went through some changes to, or proposed changes to dog access. And so we've taken your feedback from that workshop and updated the policy and bylaw, and that's in the red text. It should be in your councillor portal, so it was circulated last week. So in the draft policy we discussed, we've added a policy within the objective number 2, which is about minimising danger and distress and nuisance. And so we've added a piece there around barking, and that is just because that reflects a high and rising number of complaints and reflects the feedback that we've received. And yeah, again, about the neutering, we've actually added, we've clarified council's position. Thank you for the feedback around that. So what we're saying here is that they must be neutered. That's the general rule. However, we are emphasising that council may, at its discretion, allow for some exceptions. So we've built in some circumstances there and some examples listed in the policy where we may provide some exceptions. So the general rule is that they are required to be menacing, but there are built-in exceptions into the policy to provide for that flexibility. And finally, we've also included some detail in the policy where council may destroy a dog, and that was directly from some feedback received, just to provide some clarity on that. And when it comes to the bylaw, we just added some clarity there that dogs must be under control in leash control areas. So that means, in effect, that they are actively managed and not causing nuisance or danger. So just because they're on a leash, there's still that extra control as well. And also added some clarity around the Hodaki rail trail. And I suppose this is kind of where the next slide comes in. And then I just wanted to check in with a couple of points about the rules along that trail. So what I've done is I've got a lovely shiny new map available here. It might be a bit small up on there. So I've got some printed copy. I've only got a couple, so I think I'll pass. This provides it a bit easier. Pass the people around. So when we're looking at our rail trail as a whole, if we're starting from the top, so that's where Hodaki District Council, our area, we're just going to pretend we're walking a dog along the trail. So from that boundary through to Stirling Street, that's where our urban area starts. You're not allowed a dog, and that is prohibited through a designation. So it's not part of this bylaw review. That's through a land use rule where dogs are prohibited. So that kind of rules that area out. You can't walk dogs along there. When we get to Stirling Street, that's where you start to see the houses and the built up area, through to Farmer Street, and that's that next marker there on the map, the second one down. That's prohibited through our bylaw. So there's like a little area there where we're prohibited because one side is rural. So we've added that about five or so years ago. And then from there are, so once you get there, so you can't have dogs. And then from there, you follow the trail around and you get into town, and dogs are banned. So again, there's no rules from Farmer Street through until the CBD area. That's just going to be part of the general bylaw rules where dogs must be under control. Then you hit the CBD area and they're not allowed between 9 and 6. And you come out of that area and there's no rules, specific rules in the bylaw apart from the dog must be under control. So as you can see, there's kind of a bit of a mismatch there. So looking at what we've reflected in the draft bylaw, and I just wanted to check in with you using this visual aid just for ease of reference. It's really just an opportunity to check in with you. Are you happy with this direction? Does it still feel right before we finalise what goes out for consultation? And so far, as I say, the direction is that we're going to remove that small section from Stirling Street to Farmer Street. That would be dogs on leash. And we are having the rest of the area in Te Araha will be dogs on leash. So obviously we'll also CBD area is dogs on leash. And then from Te Araha to Matamata, the direction received is that this would be status quo. So this would be part of the general bylaw control rules where dogs don't have to be on leash but must be under control. So the question there is, do you want to retain those provisions, or do you think we should have one rule for the whole trail apart from that section where we can't change under this bylaw?
Due to the designation.
Due to the designation.
My vote would be one rule, because you can't take your dog not there and then put your dog on the trail and you take your dog off there.
Yeah.
You know, it's confusing.
You know, as we're working through the detail for consultation, we're thinking this is quite hard to explain to the community. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy with the one rule for all as well. As a landowner and a farmer, you know, the one thing you're worried about is roaming dogs and worrying stock. So provided they're under leash or under control, you know, you're not going to stop the odd roaming dog anyway and then just shoot them. But yeah, but one law makes it clearer for everyone.
Yeah.
Question, because you know a lot of dogs there, they're placid in there, but are moving like a push bike or a motorbike, and they'll chase it. Has that been a problem on the rail trail in the past?
We have had a few isolated complaints from not dogs on the trail, but neighbouring properties. And this happened Tower Road, and it was a neighbouring dog running onto the trail. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't a dog using the trail. So there was the same dog was a problem for a while, and there was a couple of isolated incidents up in Te Araha. Yeah, but on it as a whole, it's not a trend, and it wasn't users. It was neighbouring wandering dogs, and there's a general control at the bylaw that dogs must be contained to their property. So there's another control to deal with that side of things.
So are you proposing that rail just have one rule and they all dogs, whether walking or going beside a push bike, they've got to be on leave?
Yes, that
That's
was
pretty simple,
that was
eh?
what I was going to
That's
raise
good.
today.
Straightforward. Yep.
Yeah, apart from that bit.
Otherwise it gets confusing. Yeah, just make the whole thing blanket.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
It sounds like
it's
is it a general consensus around the room? Then you just
That would include the whole trail. all the way to
Dangerous.
Matamata.
I'll try one.
and the dangerous dogs have to be muzzled on that trail. Same as in the other rule. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm quite comfortable to proceed with that, but I guess something that might come out in the consultation is that from Te Aroha to Matamata, you can actually have them off leash at the moment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people cycle with the dogs running beside. So I guess we'll wait and see what the community says and see whether that's going to compromise that thing that seems to have been working fine, because the problems on the trail are actually from not dogs that are running alongside the cyclists, but on the other animals which we control another way. So I'm more than happy to proceed with that. I understand around the communication, but it will require a change of behaviour from a large section of the trail that's actually, to my observation, extensively used in that way.
And our for and order feedback was probably the majority are dog owners, so it will be about getting to a wide range of people and users, and we'll have temporary signs up in areas that are proposed to change.
I'm sure that'll be managed terrifically.
But
it does require a change.
I guess the kind of main concern for that section of Te Araha to Matamata is that it's on a road reserve and it's sort of right next to the road. So there have been concerns from the trust about allowing dogs off lead on that section. So that's kind of but yes, I definitely take your point. It's a very good point. Yes, thank you. We're nearly there. So also, finally, council needs to consider the matters as set out in section 5.5 of the LGA when making a bylaw. So there's a whole legislative considerations there, and we have a detailed assessment of these matters in your report. And we've also expanded on it in a way in our statement of proposal and tried to phrase it in more plain English. So what we'd like is for you to include that in your considerations today. And it's just about a minor change to the recommendations to include what's in your report, but also in the statement of proposal. That's just part of, part of the information that you're considering, whether you're happy that the bylaw is a proportionate and appropriate response to the issues, and that we've struck the right balance. So that's just a minor change that we're proposing to the recommendations. So you see there, it's making the determinations that it's the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problems, and just saying where that information is. So it's the assessment in the report and the statement of proposal. But maybe before we get there, if there are any other questions about anything else.
So is that going to be, is that going to be 8, is it, or is that?
I mean, you could say that it's going to streamline and standardise the dog control laws along the Hauraki Road.
Yes, and we'll need to amend the resolution for that as well. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so that then, so shall we go through that? So that in bullet point number 3,
Do you mind bringing that up, Beth? Yeah, thank you.
at the end of it, to see problems, you would like added that.
Bit of a statement of proposal.
Yep.
And also around the naming of the bylaw, you see there we've referred to it as a 2026 bylaw, but because it's an amendment, not a new bylaw, just proposing a change to the title there. It's actually 2010 because that was when the bylaw was made, and the brackets means it's amended, so it's just a technical correction.
Amended. So that in number 3, then after perceived problems, we have the addition of noting that section 155 assessment is contained in this report and in the associated statement of proposal. Exactly. Yep. And then in bullet point 4, at the end of Local Government Act 2002, as outlined in this report and in the associated statement of proposal, and that it leads into the, and then number 5, that we add in here, council approves the draft dog control bylaw 2010 amended 2006.
That's just a change of that. It's a correction to the name. So we had it as dog control bylaw 2026, but that's not correct.
And then
because it's an amendment, it should be
amended 26. And the same thing for 6, amended 26, and 7 after dogs 2010 amended to 2026, and so okay.
I just need to accommodate the Hauraki Rail Trail adjustment within this.
So that'll be bullet point 8 then, additional.
yes.
Okay, so do you want to work on some, how would you like that worded? Like, how should we frame that up?
Just a question, how does it fit in with the Hauraki TCDC and Hauraki? With their
Yeah, so
bylaws?
it differs because of the different land use through the district. So our section between Te Araha and Matamata is quite unique because it's on road reserve, but the area between us and Hauraki is dogs prohibited through the designation, and when they hit the town area, it's dogs on leash. And then on the other side, it's rural on both sides, so it's prohibited. There's a section in the Karangahaki Gorge which is dogs on leash, so it's kind of a little bit different. There's different land use.
That's a little bit of a can of worms.
It's a bit-
I think it is. So do you liaise with the other, like?
Yes.
Empire and.
Yes.
What do they say?
Yes. So
Should we have a united front on this? It's three.
Well, it's run by trust, so. you'd have-
Yeah,
is there a
we have
current
been-
run?
We set the bylaws, the trust don't know.
We have been checking in with the trust as to what they recommend, and they are happy with dogs on lead.
She was gonna come over and address us.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Still coming? She should have been here probably before we did this.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna do it, we might as well do a district, 'cause we had an American guy gonna stay with, I told you a couple of weeks ago, and he got eaten by, we didn't get it, he got chased by a pack of dogs. I couldn't get out of him, whether it was Kaiawa to Thames or Thames to Puri.
Yeah,
And he ended up
so,
at Thames Hospital with a broken wrist.
the
So
bit
then I tried to
between-
find out, but I rang Thames and I said, have you had
Mhm.
they said, oh, we've had a few incidents, but that was a neighbour's dogs jumped out, chased them up
Yeah.
the track
the bit between Kupu and Thames, you're allowed dogs on lead.
on lead, but yeah, as you say, can't stop the neighbour's dogs jumping out. Yeah.
So just in terms of that, what I would suggest is perhaps we amend part 5 of your recommendation, which says council approves the bylaw for public consultation in accordance with various sections of the Local Government Act. We could just add to that, subject to and the amendment of requiring the Hauraki Rail Trail from Stirling Street in Te Araha further south or going south to be determined as an on-leash area or a leash controlled area. So we could just we could incorporate it within that if you're happy with that.
From Stirling Street to
Or Stirling Street south,
south
so all the way through from that point,
to be on leash.
or because they leash, I think it's a leash control area.
I was also wondering, Mary Ash, do we want to put a reason in under 4.1 as the most appropriate form of bylaw and that streamlines and standardises the legislation or something like that? Is a reasoning around it, or just you're just happy with the appropriate form of bylaw?
Yeah.
Does Te Araha on leash? You know?
No, it's prohibited through a designation, through a land use pool. Yeah, when it was first built.
It was previously a rail corridor, so when they took the designation out, that was one of the conditions.
So go back to Andrew's point, do we want to put a 7 and another 4? Or can you repeat that, Andrew?
Well, you can slot it under 0.1. It's the most appropriate form of bylaw due to streamlining and standard like that, you know.
And sort of,
Just the reasoning around it.
Yep, that's fine. Yep.
building an exemption.
That's appropriate form of bylaw.
Okay. Okay, and on that, are you happy to move that then?
Yep,
Andrew, is he happy to?
And I'll stick into Ash.
And James Sainsbury, yes, seconds, all in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Big piece of work.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Your item 7.3. You're only 3.3. And we have the review of the Council's local government statement. Tamara.
Anna, if it's all right with you, Mayor, I would like to take this report as read. I will start off though by saying apologies, there were some typos in that document, but I will fix those up prior to publishing to our website. Yes, the review of the council local governance statement is a requirement under the Local Government Act, and we are required to review this document and have it published within 6 months of the triennial election.
Okay. Any questions? Tamara, around that? You'd like to move?
Oh, just one question, is there any substantial change from the last one?
No, nothing substantial. We did add in some additional legislation, fix up some typos. We also had some documents in there previously that we said if adopted, and they have since been adopted. So we just remove those words, just terminology.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, but the motion moved by Sue, but it's someone and Dane will second, all in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mara. And 7.4. Now, this is a pretty easy one, I'm pretty sure. 7.4 is public requires approval to build an additional structure on at Thomas Park, but it's not in Thomas Park, but next door. And we have areas looking a little bit different this morning. Thanks, man.
Morning. Apologies, you're stuck with me, Ashia, as attending some training. So this report is basically to grant landowner approval to Plunkett to erect an additional building on the portion of Thomas Park that they lease from council. The technology cooperates. There we go. On the map on the screen there, you can see the thick orange line is the total extent of the property. The red line is where we have the community park and the playground that we visited during the bus tour. And the blue line is the portion of the land that Plunkett has a lease over. So they're wanting to basically add another building to that space, sort of a porticom type building, and to put it where that car park space is at the moment. So this picture is just from a catalogue, so this is really the colour it will end up being. The reason we brought this to you today is because it is a building on a reserve, and therefore it needs resource consent under our district plan. It's also a building, and therefore it needs building consent, and an applicant can't exercise those on our land without landowner approval. And the delegation for landowner approvals in that case sits with council.
Just jumping in. I know this is our land, but isn't it a granny flat? It still has to go through would that be a granny flat?
No, they want to use it for their Plunkett purposes. So it's, I guess, the use of the land.
Okay. As I say, I know there's a landowner.
Yeah.
Just was testing that.
So it will be sort of part of the clinic space, essentially. So because it needs landowner approval in principle from council in order that they can lodge their consents, but also because they have a lease with us, what normally happens in these situations is if something's added to the existing lease, we amend the lease to reflect that. Where something needs resource consent, we'll mention the resource consent in the lease document so that it will cross-references, and sometimes there might be consent conditions that they need to be aware of that we then kind of incorporate in the lease. It's all nice and tidy. Again, that delegation sits with council, so it's really just seeking the approval in principle, and then we can deal with the process going forward. The building consent and the resource consent process, that looks at the details of the safety of the structure and the health and safety of the site during construction and all that sort of stuff. So this is kind of just that first step, really.
Yeah, I think it's just commented, I think it's a no-brainer. I think the great service that Plunkett provides for the district, and I think it's going to tidy up the area, to be fair. Grace.
I'm a current user, and I can tell you firsthand that it's short on space and they're crazy busy all the time. And if I suppose the lease ended, would they just take up the building?
Yeah, the building is relocatable, so that there's always.
maybe just, be conflict of interest if you use your sense.
Oh, sorry,
Just-
apologies.
It might not be, but maybe just, very tenuous. But that's all right. So you want that noted?
Oh, yes, I can, sorry, apologies, no.
That's right.
I'm just saying, yeah, I could tell that they're,
And we might just get you to abstain from voting.
So
yes,
question mark.
yes, sorry,
Oh, sorry,
apologies.
Bruce.
James Thomas.
Yeah, no, just a minor question. I just, and you probably answered them, Grace, because I just wondered why the current building wasn't fit for purpose. Because, you know, I thought Plunkett had actually, and they are a great service, actually, I take your point, but they're not as visible as they used to be. They don't seem to be out and about. Is that wrong? It's just my perception. I'm not against any of this. It's just a question around, yeah. They don't seem to be attended to, I think.
Honestly, I think, I wasn't too aware till I had the third child. And then when you can't, not in the, I guess you have had children recently, I don't find them as present, but they come to your house. They're currently overseeing, Waihi, as well in all this area at one thing. So,
It's a big thing.
yeah, but I think I would really be aware if I didn't.
Yeah, no, so I don't have a conflict of interest apart from the name on the park.
Okay, I'll get someone that would be here.
Yeah, do I have a conflict of interest that I used to go to the one in Matamata?
No.
Oh, okay, so, in terms of what I can speak on in terms of the Minesville one, yeah, I think it's very beneficial for the children, especially in terms of they tend to call you, so then you go into the place and then they, you know, they've got so many facilities or so much know-how in terms of how to like people, you know, especially new parents come in, they, you know, take their weight, make sure that they're, you know, in terms of healthy wise. But also, I think it's a not-for-profit, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's not even funded by the government, I don't think. I think it's actually funded by Goodwill, people who fund it. So, what happened to the old building, is it?
It's still staying. It's just terribly laid out. So I think for any additional purposes, you would have to. This is just me speaking from going in there. Would have to redo the whole entire thing. So
Yeah, like in terms of location, I think it's perfect. You know, it's right in front of the playground and all that sort of stuff. Gives it kind of like a children friendly space. So,
Yeah. That was you're happy to be there.
very happy to meet you. Yes.
Great.
I've got no issue with Plunkett. You're happy though from a resource.
From the
From
park
a
and reserves
park
point of
and
view,
reserves,
we're
that's all I'm
happy that it's
concerned
not
about. We're
going to
not setting
be an
precedent
impact on the
putting
Geelong
ourselves in a
reserve. Yeah,
sticky position.
and the consent process will go deal with some of the minor detail as well.
Being a non-profit organisation, can we help them out? Like you say, I think to put a portable building like that on your house, you don't need much there. So why are we got resource consent? Is it because we're in a park?
Because the land.
Public park. So can we sort of, like, really saying non-profit, can we help them out with the costings? Can we help them out with the costings as far as the building consent and the resource consent? Can we do that in-house so someone does it as a goodwill gesture? Don't charge them?
There is a
Because they don't want a big bull over your head, do they?
community groups can apply for a grant at the cost of resource consent.
So we're still going to charge them.
As I understand it, under the law, you can't write off the cost, so, but council does
Charge
make
$10.
a grant available, but that's, I suppose that's not something we deal with directly.
Well, we're a community service, so we should be
We're
serving.
gonna put your rates up.
No, there's someone stands up for work to do it, so might as well just allocate a few hours to do it.
So I think, councillor, that's why there is a grant system, because rates are a tax. So we tax people to fund the organisation, and we say resource consent shall pay for the cost of the consent, irrespective of who you are. But what council has decided is, to the point that you raised, says that there are reasons why council might offer relief because of the nature of the organisation. But there should be a process, not a difficult process, by the way. I don't believe to apply for a grant.
That's right.
So it just treats it that way rather than us trying to.
Subsidise.
Yes.
So you mean an internal grant within council?
No, well, it's council, yes.
So it's just the money go around.
Well,
But the trouble is that open a can of worms, and you have one, I mean, it's great, but all of a sudden you have 1,000 people in the area all applying for consents for free. So their job is to go and find the funding somewhere else from different revenue streams that are available, and then bring it into council, because otherwise it just gets swamped on.
So I guess the first step today is really just getting that approval in principle. And then direct them to other avenues within council, which might be able to get a grant.
Yes, yeah, Dane second. Remedy moves, Dane second. All in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Carried. Morning tea. 8.1, district plan and RMA update. Jason. Morning, welcome.
Good everyone. I'll just provide a quick summary of the report today. I'll start with our plan change exemption. So on the 19th of December, we lodged the plan change 65 minor matters application to the minister. Last week, we inquired about the status of the application with MFE. They advised that the application is likely to be passed with the minister near the end of February, and it will take a few weeks after that to issue a decision. In terms of plan change 49, the application is currently being finalised with the team. We're working to lodge the application near the end of March for that one. We've got private plan change Calcutta. Staff are currently reviewing the application and awaiting further information from the applicant. There hasn't been much change since the last meeting for that one. We've also got the MPDC growth strategy. The team will be focusing more on this work after the lodgement of the submissions on the bills, and we're currently working on understanding the WISE model population projections and how much existing capacity there is in the district. As you're all probably aware, there's a lot of movement in the RMA reform space lately. So the government released the planning bill and the natural environmental bill in December last year. We're also lodging our submission to be likely this week before the 13th of February, which is the deadline. We're also preparing a submission on the development levies, which is due on the 20th of February. And the first package of the 10 national direction instruments came into force last month, including the new NES for detached minor residential units and a new MPS for natural hazards. The second package for that is expected later this year, including the new NES. Since our last meeting, we also launched 2 new RMA web pages. The first of that being the granny flat information page, which supports anyone looking to build a granny flat in our district. It's already had strong interest. We've got 4,966 views for that. The second outlines the recent national direction changes. We've got links to the MPS and NES that took effect on the 15th of January. It's new, but it's already received 114 views. We're also seeing continued engagement with our resource management reform webpage launched last year, which has now reached 8,198 views. And it remains a key source of up-to-date information on the reform. And lastly, I'll just pass on to Fiona to update on the Manawhaka whenua invitation.
Kia ora. Since our last meeting, we have had we had initial hui at the end of November and a further meeting in January, and we've established a technical working group who are going to be meeting fortnightly. And one of the first tasks that we're doing is to look at a project management plan, and that will include regular workshops with elected members and boards of the respective iwi.
Any chance we can have this up on the screen or not? Still on the Plunket.
No, well, it's in there. Yeah. It's in your.
Oh, right.
It's a, okay, recommendation is that the information be received. Is there any questions on that? Yeah.
Just a question on what are those against actually I've got
The National Environmental Standards for Papakāinga. The National Environmental Standard for Papakāinga.
is that included in
So that's still coming. It'll be in the second tranche of the national direction. Yeah, coming later this year.
what's that expected time?
They haven't really said, but yeah, probably in the next few months we expect. Like yeah, mid-2020. Yeah.
Just that return, sorry. Referring to the growth strategy, what's Y's projection?
The population projections, and they use a sort of land use model and information from Stats New Zealand to put forward sort of low, medium, and high scenarios based on sort of internal migration, birth, death, natural increase, and all that type of stuff. So they're important in terms of working out likely demand for land for different uses, like numbers of dwellings, numbers of sections and things. It's also the same information the council uses for its infrastructure planning and things like that.
The latest lot that you got, did it have Ashbourne in it?
It's not really related to the projections because they're based on the demographics associated with the population. So yeah, it's sort of like, you know, how many people are expected, I suppose, because of birth, death, natural increase, the aging population, and things like that. Yeah.
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 What about immigration with that?
Does include immigration and internal migration. Yeah.
I was just curious whether what you're getting from the government also accounting for growth by Ashbourne as well as the other growth that you normally get. But it doesn't sound like it is.
Well, they use a particular, I suppose, modelling environment, and it's a projection of the future. Things can change depending on what happens, and fast track is a little bit difficult for people to account for. Mm.
Just a general thing. I received an email this morning from Groundswell. Did you get one, Andrew? I noticed. No, but
Through council.
no, it wasn't through council. Right. But there's some interesting comments from the farmer perspective, all right? Which you won't have seen, right? But I'd actually like just to, if I was to email it to you, right? For you to dispel any fears of that they're having, all right, in your view. Now, are you what I'm they've got concerns that some of this thing could actually backfire in the long term. Right? And I'd like your comments on it, but and you can't comment on it because you haven't seen it. But would you be would
Ben's still see.
yes.
Is that related to the submissions?
It's submission. Well, it's in relation to the changes of the RMA and what have you that are being brought in. Okay. So it's just that I got it this morning, and I thought, it's just in the back of your mind that what might come in, all right, could allow for future manipulation by government ministers because it's more open in its interpretation. Right? Happy?
a bit hard for you to comment on that. I don't.
Yeah.
No, I'm not asking for a
And
comment.
certain information that you've seen through in this.
Or one interesting point that we are making in the submission is that the definitions that they're using in the planning bill and natural environment bill aren't abundantly clear about how the rural environment is treated. And so we think that being a rural district, it should be very clear on the face of the bill how the rural environment and rural resources and highly productive land, all that type of thing, how that's to be treated and seen.
In the freshwater plains.
Yes, yeah. So it's just, yeah, so that's a point that we're making. But it would be interesting to see, but I don't think it will affect what we're saying now.
No, I know that. It's just that it's, to me, it's just an overall understanding of how you might interpret their concerns.
And of course, this read it, there'll be a lot of people that have, which is always the thing, isn't it? Yes.
Okay, if there's no further questions, so I've got the recommendation is the report be received. James Sainsbury moved that, and who I got a step of that was that Andrew. Awesome. All in favour? Please say aye. Opposed? Gary. Okay, 8.2. 2025. Budget. 2025 financial report, and then we're tracking. Anticipation.
There's a tiny who's going to see.
The great thing is I won't see it.
Yeah, might be a bit worse.
I was going to say you might have called me in terms of timing. It might be, so.
We're going
It's actually, they might have say in the morning too.
Yeah. Look at that, eh? You thought we'd be an hour behind, didn't you, mate? And Adrian, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Ash and members. The November financial report basically shows you the overview of how we perform. I know it's February, we're presenting the November report. We've got a plan around the December report, hopefully targeting in the next couple of weeks to be presented. And I take that the report is read. Just pointing out a few information, I suppose, in terms of operational income, revenue and expenses, we've done better compared to the same period last year. A month before, October to November. And in terms of the capital income or revenue and expenses, incomes a bit behind, especially around development contributions in the wastewater activity. We've seen that there's due to seasonal variance that there's slowdown in the subdivisions happening. So we are about $582,000 behind for wastewater development contribution. So just putting out there as a summary, and happy to respond any queries. I've got Lanya here as well to help me out. Thank you.
So any questions regarding the financial report? Andrew.
Sorry, me again. I see we've got a funding risk, liquidity risk management, and just wanted reassurance that that is until the management of the assets and everything have been transferred to the waters.
Yeah, that's right. So we made a change to our liability management policy last year to allow some transitional provisions as we transfer our debt over to Three Waters. So yeah, we will sit outside our funding parameters for a time until it transfers over.
How long?
Well, we're sort of working through at the moment how the debt is going to transfer across. So yeah, couldn't tell you specifically how long we're going to be outside, but yeah, we've sort of allowed that. We're sort of allowing ourselves to breach our policy in that respect until we get through that.
And are there any extra costs for breaching that policy? You know, some interest or
no, that's a policy we set for ourselves, and that still maintaining within like our LGFA covenants. So, good.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. I highlighted a couple of thing in here, but I talked to Manoa about it yesterday, but maybe it's in other councillors' minds too, because I saw the figures in the financial report for the stadium, and you know, with the figures of like 4.4 spent and 7.9 million carried forward, and in my non-accounting mind, I was wondering where that came from, the councillors' contributions, so 3 million, but and I cleared it up and said that the council was obviously handling the money going on that project. So just thought that might want to clarify it. Some of you others picked that up and thought where that sits. Have I got someone that is happy to move the recommendation that the financial report be reset? James Thomas. I got someone that will second that.
Yep.
Andrew, all in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And I'm going to declare the meeting.
Public exclusion.
Oh, motions. Oh, sorry. Yeah, if I can just get a, well, I'll actually move the motion that we're deferring the public excluded item to a later date, subject to new information that's coming forward. New information. Have I got James Thomas from second. All in favour, please say aye.
Thank
you. Sorry. Yeah, and I write it down too. I go James S and James T on my names, so that's something that all in favour, please say aye. Opposed, carried, and I'll now declare the meeting closed.